Hello and welcome to the November 20th edition of the Bubb Report. I am the Bubb Report's assistant producer, Rion Charles. Last week, one of Grenada's most militant trade unions, the Technical and Allied Workers Union, sanctioned a strike action at the Grenada Ports Authority in response to the decision by the management at the island's main port of entry to terminate the services of one of its employees. In a release issued on November 15th, the Ports Authority said, quote, "The actions of the individual were synonymous with gross negligence and was considered a summary offense under the disciplinary provision of the collective bargaining agreement with the Technical and Allied Workers Union," unquote. According to the ports, the offense here was how the employee authorized the issuance of exit passes, which severely affected the revenue earning potential of the entity. The union, for its part, is arguing that the employee's dismissal was unwarranted and critiqued the port's management of not following due process in proceeding with the dismissal. While the matter is currently before the minister responsible for labor, some have suggested that the decision to sanction this strike action is illegal and goes against the terms and conditions outlined in the country's essential services provision of the Labor Code. The business community is angered by this action and has suggested that they are on track to rack up millions of dollars in losses due to the gridlock at the port, owing to the lack of movement of goods. This week on our program, we will assess the economic impact of this industrial action, which is not the first at the ports in 2022, but the first under this current administration. Also on the report, we will speak with two retirees of the Grenada Public Service who are the beneficiaries of the retroactive pensions payout which got underway in St. George's last week. One of the pensioners, Mrs. Hermelyn Armstrong, brought a lawsuit against the Government of Grenada in 2010, demanding that the state honors her constitutionally guaranteed pension under the 1958 laws of Grenada. The public sector retirees would reflect on their long journey towards the realization of a basic standard of living in their retirement years after giving so much to the development of Grenada. We welcome our guests, Chenny Joseph, shipping management expert, retired public servant and litigant, Hermelyn Armstrong, Kenny John, the president of the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and Mike Neckles, retired public servant with the Government of Grenada. And here is our host for this week's program, Dr. Kellon Bubb. We begin with the Bubb Report's weekly editorial.
A pleasant good afternoon to all our listeners and viewers of the Bubb Report. Of course, this week's program is not being aired in the traditional 10 a.m. time slot because I was away on business. And so I only returned to the Washington, D.C. area this afternoon. And I am living up to my commitment to ensuring that we can have an episode of the Bubb Report this week, albeit perhaps an abbreviated episode. I was away attending the National Communication Association conference in New Orleans, Louisiana. And so I want to begin with this week's editorial. Now, last week, two high-profile robberies captured the attention of the national community. These robberies occurred at the heavily trafficked business establishments in the south of the island. Before mainstream news outlets had the chance to report on these brazen attacks on unsuspecting and understandably traumatized retail workers, CCTV footage of the incident went viral on the WhatsApp platform, and it was shared thousands of times by Grenadian netizens. Now, in this hyper-connected age, information on WhatsApp, which has more than 1.5 billion users, can go viral in minutes as individuals forward messages along to their friends or groups without any mechanism to determine its origin. Following the two high profile robberies, another false and unverified WhatsApp posting also went viral, suggesting that another robbery occurred in the south of the island at the Grenada Breweries Limited. The posting also falsely attributed a license plate number belonging to a private citizen as the vehicle involved in this non incident. The viral forward on WhatsApp was also picked up by a popular Grenadian social media platform, which recanted the original post without offering an apology for posting false information. The closed nature of the messaging services like WhatsApp complicates the difficult task of fighting rumors and stamping out lies. Unlike the largely open forums of Facebook and Twitter, WhatsApp hosts private chats which are encrypted, and no one, not even WhatsApp's employees, can read the content of messages not intended for them. Now, these closed platforms, while they serve a vital purpose in keeping people connected and informed, can also be a dangerous and deadly rumor mill. The infamous Indian WhatsApp lynchings occurred in 2018, in which close to 2 dozen men were killed by mobs over WhatsApp rumors that males of a certain age were kidnapping children. All a rumor. The same type of rumor spread like wildfire in Mexico, and a mob burned 2 men to death before anyone checked. As it turns out, these men were innocent, and that rumor was just what it is, a rumor. Viral content sharing on WhatsApp also doesn't take into account respect for privacy and the dignity of the dead, as some users cavalierly share images of people who died under tragic circumstances, such as car accidents, without any regard and respect for the dignity of the dead and their bereaved families. There is good evidence that platforms such as Twitter and WhatsApp, that lies actually spread faster than the truth on these platforms. In a March 2018 study by data scientists at the University of Pennsylvania, they found that virally is that's virality is partially driven by psychological arousal. Controversial and ghastly content that evokes high arousal responses, such as awe, anger, fear, and anxiety, tend to spread faster than serious and more innocuous content that evokes low arousals, such as sadness and introspection. With that being said, one can only appeal to our sense of discretion when sharing vital content on WhatsApp. The best antidote in the absence of content moderation on WhatsApp is education. But of course, there is a saying that when your neighbor's house is on fire, that you need to wet yours. And let us not wait until a viral moment gets out of hand in Grenada before someone gets hurt. And at this time, I wish to welcome our first two guests for this segment. We have Ms. Hermelyn Armstrong, a retiree of the Grenada Public Service, as well as Mr. Michael Henry Nichols, also a retiree of the Grenada Public Service. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. And apparently, I learned on background that the both of you are actually from the community of Munich.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
I'm from Munich.
I am from Munich. Not
Both
living
of you.
here, but I'm from Munich.
But you are both already, but there appears to be a spirit of resistance in Munich. I mean, we have people like the late Judy Williams. She took the fight to on behalf of the people to those in power. Michael Batiste, former leader of the opposition and Minister of Agriculture, also from Munich. So the late Sister Gabrielle Mason is also from Munich. She herself was an advocate for education. What is it about Munich? I mean, Ms. Armstrong, you yourself, you took the fight to the government of Grenada. What is it about Munich? Is it the river in Munich? What is it? The cassava? What is it up in Munich that causes you guys to be so passionate about your causes?
It could be the cassava, and also it runs in the vein because three of the people names you call there, we are all related.
You're all related.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
the three of
Mr.
the people you
Nichols?
call, Mr. Baptist, Miss Williams, and Sister Gabriel, we all are related.
Me too.
Well, look at that. So it probably runs in the family.
Yeah.
But Mrs. Armstrong, of course, last week was a significant day. I believe it's a historic day, really, and it will go down as a historic day in recorded Grenadian history. The fact that a central government was able to hold through to the promise of paying pensions. Mrs. Armstrong, I want to begin with you because you were one of those people who took the government to court. And you said that you deserve to have your pension. You provided these amounts of years of service to the state of Grenada, and you're entitled to that pension. And so the first question I would ask you is what motivated you to take that critical step of litigation, of legal action, initially,
It's
looking back?
that, I should say that right is right, and persons should be rewarded for their labor. And what got me to it is to bring out an awareness, because some persons were getting pension after 2 terms in office, right? And the persons that work for 26 years plus not getting anything. It's just unfair. So that's why I did what I did.
Yeah, okay, very well. And let us talk about Dr. Alexis. I believe Dr. Alexis was one of your legal representatives. He was one of your lawyers. Going into this litigation, what was Dr. Alexis's position? Did he believe that he had a strong case against the state at the time?
Yes, he did, and he said so.
Mm-hmm. He did say
because
so.
He said, I'm one of the persons that started the years of service I did was exactly what I was supposed to work for. I worked my 26 years, 3 months, and 14 days. So I deserve my pension.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What motivated you? Of course, you just alluded to the fact that you said right is right, wrong is wrong, and you also mentioned the inequity in the pension system in the country, where politicians serve 2 terms in parliament, and they get a lovely pension in addition to their NIS benefits. And I believe that ought to apply to all public servants, not only those who sit in parliament and get all of the perks of being in parliament. Yes.
Well, what happened there? What really ignited me to do it? The union had asked other persons before me, and they declined for different reasons. But I volunteered, we were talking in the courtyard in the Ministry of Finance, and they were looking for somebody. I said, I will do it. And Ms. Hafford said, you will do it? I said, sure, I'll do it. So when I retired, she told me what to do, write who to write to, and get a response and bring it to the union. And we took it from there.
Absolutely. Now, fast forward, we just had an election, and promises were made. Of course, the judgment was handed down. How did you react to the judgment, first of all?
First of all, I should say I'm very happy. And I really thank God for good governance and a prime minister who could see that people work, they should be rewarded. That's how I look at it. So I'm very glad for this opportunity.
And let me bring you in, Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry, I'm sure you were also following your cousin's case here, because you guys are related, apparently. I didn't even know that when I was putting this program together. But in terms of the judgment, how did you react to the judgment when it was handed down?
Well, words can really express the way I felt when I heard the judgment, because it was a long struggle. And if I explain to you, my struggle was a very difficult one compared to a lot of people. I started working since 1981 in the revolution. And I had about a 6 months break, 6 to 8 months break. because they was paying me even after the intervention as if I was working. However, when I retired, they refused to give me pension. So they tell me to apply for special pension. I applied for the special pension. I bring all my information. I go and swear all over the place as if I was sending me all over the place to swear that I worked before and get witness to prove that I worked before. And when I submit my documents and so forth, they refuse to give me special pension, considering that I know people who had left the service for 3 years and how much years, and when they come back, they join the service and give them special pension, and even some get full pension. So I get to realize that we were in a real difficult position because they was using those created laws just to help their friends, and it was not something that public servants was generally would benefit from. Then I didn't give up. I went to other places. I went to Ministry of Finance. They told me in finance, the only person that could solve my problem is to write the GG. So I wrote the GG, thinking the GG will read the letter. Somebody called me from Department of Public Administration and told me that the matter before court. So it's at the end of the court hearing, you go decide whether I get full pension or special pension. And that was it. So when that happened, I said, boy, life is a struggle. I really didn't give up on it. I went doing what I does best. I went on farming. I acquired more lands. It was a difficult journey because after Ivan, I had to refinance my loan from my home because I had a lot of damage in my roof. So he extended the amount because my loan was supposed to be ended at the year 60. But I had a 2-year extension because of that. So I had to do a lot of things now to meet up with the bank payment. In fact, I had to forego a life insurance policy and use up the money to bring me level so that I wouldn't have no problem with the bank. So it was very difficult. And I'm only speaking for myself, but I know of a lot of other co-workers who had it worse than me. So in general, public servant, we had faced a uphill task handling this number of years of destruction. Well, but as I would say, God has the glory in his hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me bring back Miss Armstrong. Of course, what was it like? I mean, not having worked for as long as you did and as hard as you did, not being able to get a pension. What was subsisting like on a day-to-day basis? I mean, Mr. Henry here just spoke about the struggles that he experienced with respect to paying bills and meeting his financial obligations. What was that like?
I would have ended up like him, but I didn't, because although I had a mortgage, before I left work, months before, I was wondering, well, Lord, what would I do? How would I this, that? But eventually, I attend a particular church in the south of the island. I'm very active in church. And my pastor said that they needed someone in the church to work. So, like, I finished working today. He said, Sister Homie, come to work tomorrow. So that was the bridge for me. That held me together. Thanks for that job. So I didn't go through that phase of having to wander. So I was fortunate.
Okay. All right. Very well. But your other colleagues, again, you were fortunate, but a lot of them were not in terms of
course, they
having
worried.
to, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So now let's talk about the judgment. And I want to bring you in, Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry, in terms of when you saw the judgment come down, and of course, we also had an election in the middle of that. You heard the promises that two sides were making with respect to paying those pensions. What was your thinking around that? Did you feel as if, okay, well, the judgment was handed down, but are they really going to make true on their promise to pay the pensions? Your thoughts, Mr. Nichols, on that?
The honest truth, when I saw and I heard the Prime Minister's speech and the excuse he was making, in fact, I went back to the stage where he said it was 1 point something billion dollars to be paid.
When you say the Prime Minister, you mean the former Prime Minister, Dr.
Former
Keith
Prime
Mitchell,
Minister.
current
Yeah.
leader of the opposition. Okay, please proceed.
When I his explanation, I wonder, because I remember he promised that whatever the court result was, he would stand by it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he called the people to the trade center and I listened to the speech, I personally said that this man has no intention to pay that pension. Because the fact remains that his explanation means that if he pay the pension, so much people are going to suffer. He mentioned all the little villages that men go be without a bread. And I say, Lord, we still have to go this long way. But God is great. That the other side, they were fresh, and I had the better advantage than other people that the present PM has a Munich link. He has Munich blood in him too.
Right, his father, I believe, is from Munich. Yes.
Right. I used to go for the ball. His father too fast ball. His father was a fast bowler. We used to call him Bra. So I had to trust him because that is my people. So I could say that I had believed from the time he said he would pay the pension. I had hopes that he would pay the pension and the gratuity.
Mrs. Armstrong, did you share that same sentiment?
Partly.
Okay.
When the judgment was handed down, and I heard the former Prime Minister saying that he have to put a committee together. I told myself that's a stalling tactics, because the election before an MOU was signed to pay pension. It didn't happen for whole 4 and how much years. So this, I thought again, was a wait and see. If we win the election, we will stall. And if we lose, whatever. That's how I look at it. But when this new government, since they started to talk about it, I knew, I had confidence that this government would have paid the pension.
Okay, all right. And last week the pension was paid. Did you make a visit? Were you called yet? Were either of you called yet?
Of course, I started spending mine already.
I have not been called yet because my own have some technicalities.
Okay, but you're
Yes.
confident they would call you.
Yes,
Mr. Nichols, you said
I will be called.
you started spending yours. Of course, nobody should tell you what to do with your money.
No,
And
it's mine.
quite frankly, to paraphrase, I can't say that on air, because this program, although it's on social media, it's also aired on television in Grenada. The former Prime Minister said is my expletive money, so I had to take it, and I could do whatever. Only sorry I didn't get more. So
Well,
you can do whatever you want with your money as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
If I choose to go and sit down by the roadside and spend it, if I feel anything I feel to do with it is mine.
It's your money.
But how does it feel? I mean, I'm sure, Mrs. Armstrong, for you in particular, because you took the fight to the state. How does it feel that you're seeing some of your colleagues, making these receiving what's due to them? As they say, their grandfather's back pay, but really it's their back pay.
It feels like a breath of fresh air. That's how I would say it feels. And I'm really happy for persons, because like this previous government wanted us to just, all public servants, retire into poverty. So I have to say thank God for the change and thank God for the payments.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Henry, I'm sure you also feel a sense of relief, a sense of happiness.
Of course, I share the sentiment. Our sister is saying that I believe that the government plan was for all of us to have to go to the party office and ask for something, because I cannot understand the rationale behind it. Because when I look at it, that after the revolution, everything else was illegal in terms of the constitution, except that part of what had happened in the revolution. And I just couldn't understand why, if you love people and people put you to serve them, Why you just cannot understand or see the needs of people? I mean, the effort. If there was a greater effort to pay gratuity and pension, and in fact, the union went backwards. They bent backwards to assist government, because I remember in the MOU, the government was going to pay workers in terms of the pension itself about 70% or 70 something percent, but they were supposed to pay us our full gratuity. And that is where the discrepancy came, is when they refused to pay the gratuity. So as it turns out, we end up benefiting on the long term.
So you think there is a long-term benefit there? Yep. Okay. And before we get to the next segment, let's see if we have any comments of use to our two panelists here. And please, you can leave some comments for them. Allison George is saying, I'm looking for an adopted mother and father. All in want to adopt me now. Somehow I find are related to them pensioners.
Oh Lord.
I guess no adoption on the cards.
No. Having no
Okay.
grandchildren.
You have enough grandchildren?
Yes, so I
guess.
can't
All right.
anybody.
Okay. Jocelyn Smith is saying congratulations to all who got their pension. Don't forget to save my share. Okay. Someone is saying just pure wickedness, no rationale. What about deceased pensioners? Can the money go into their estate? I do believe there are provisions for that. Yes? Yeah, there
Yes,
are
I
provisions
think so.
for that.
Yes,
There are provisions for that as well. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So moving forward, of course, both of you, were you also actively involved in the labor movement?
Yes, I was. I was the shop steward for my department for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
I was shop steward for a short time while working. Yeah, short time.
Okay, so both of you were shop stewards, so you do understand. And talk to us about the importance, in your view, of activism and advocacy by the labor movement in Grenada. There is a tendency to think of the labor movement as organizations that just take union dues and not do anything for their workers. But talk to us about the role you believe that the labor movement played in this particular pension battle.
Well,
any one of you can go with that. Yes, Mr. Nichols.
First of all, I must say that there are some. It was a hard fight, especially. I could swear for one person, Sister Madana Harford.
Mm-hmm.
I remember she was telling us one time, I want to retire, I want to leave this thing, but unless that pension issue don't settle, I don't think I could. Once we get somebody to, we must get somebody to fight them. Unless we don't get that pension issue settled, I wouldn't leave. And I remember when Sister Armstrong judgment came, we really thought that, well, things would have been okay, they would have settled up all the issues. But it didn't happen. The fight went on. Sister Rachel and so forth, we all came together, and it was a tough battle. The teachers union, I must say, and TAU, it was a kind of united front in getting the struggle forward. I cannot say that the workers themselves was fully behind it, because there were times when sometimes when you see the turnout of workers, you wonder if we are fighting for the same thing. Mm-hmm. Because the government, I feel, was intimidating a lot of people. There were a lot of people who afraid to come to meetings and things. It was a real tough struggle, because I remember there was a time we were supposed to go on a march, and I had to mobilize some of the workers, and they give me the assurance they were coming. But the morning when we were supposed to go, I remember some of them calling me and telling me, look what was happening, and they're not really going to go on a march. and all kind of excuse. But there were some real committed and strong supporters. Even if they were, you know what hurt me most of all? That people who have to get pension, they didn't come out and match. And people like Sister Belma and them who already had pension, they took the bull by the hand to give us the support. And we must thank those who really had already got pension and stayed with us to fight the battle.
Yeah. Mrs. Armstrong, your thoughts on that, and again the role of the union and the membership, because really, if we think about it, the union is the membership, and a union is only as strong as the membership who support the efforts of the unions.
Well, what I should say, when I decided to take this issue, stand up for this issue, the president of the union was Sister Madonna Harford, and I really thank her, because to me, in those times the union was stronger. And like since her phase and Adrian Francis and even Rachel, the union is getting, well, what I should say, dormant almost. Like they doesn't have a voice. They have a voice conveniently. And I think politics have a lot to do with it. They're afraid. They fear. That's how I look at it. But if you're standing up, stand up for what you believe and be bold. I don't tell people, just look at me and say, why are you so? I said, that's just me. So I don't know.
I think we are cut from the same cloth. I happen to be the same. I fight back. Yeah, yes. And sometimes you have to fight back, right? And because people tend to think that they can just roll over you like a bulldozer.
Yes.
And they ought not to do that, especially when you work. I mean, my grandmother, I've said on previous episodes of the Bubb Report, my grandmother retired without also receiving a pension, having worked at the Grenada Post Office. At that time, it was not the Postal Corporation. At that time, it was under Karana. She was an office attendant. And she retired without a pension, and she got ill during her retirement, and she's honestly died a premature death because she did not have those benefits to take care of her.
Because when you retire, you have more, like the sickness was wait for you to retire. So when you retire, you have more doctor bills and hospital bills and everything to pay. So that's when we need our money. So a caring government could have looked into that before now.
Okay, very well. All right, folks, I want to give you the opportunity for some closing comments. Mr. Nichols, I want to begin with you. I do not want to interrupt your Sunday line. So thank you all for appearing at this time. Obviously, it's the afternoon. People are preparing for the week ahead, so I really appreciate the time you've taken. Mr. Nichols, over to you.
Well, I must first of all say thanks to the government for keeping to the word. It is about time that people stop using us like tools, promising us things, and in the end, don't stand up to what they promise. I also would like to say that despite what happened, there are some other class of workers, category of workers, that the government, because to me, personally, the union don't fight for them. I don't know what is hindering the union. I don't know what is the problem, but there are some category of workers who I know is going to suffer, because some of them, they had worked, for example, may work for 15 years under one condition, and then they turn you into contract, but you continue working. So they work long years too, and they deserve something. So I don't know, as a caring government, I think they need to put a package together, because they may not be able to pay them from in the manner which they pay public servants. But they did the same service. Some of them work the same place like me. They did the same work, but it's just that the corrupt government had placed them into all kind of different categories and give them all kind of funny names. And as a result of that now, they may end up in the old age not getting anything. So I personally would like to see if it's the union or the government themselves find a way, if it's creating that kind of fund for these people in particular to get some benefit, because they're going to feel the same pain that we felt.
And that is where the question of pension reform comes in, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Mrs. Armstrong, over to you for some final comments.
Well, I should say like what Mr. Nichols just said about these other workers.
Are you able to
And
adjust your camera? There you go. Yeah, if you can lean back so we can see you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yes,
Yeah.
what Mr. Nichols just said concerning these other workers, I think that I'm taking on my own to say that I think we have a caring government, and I'm sure they would look into that. And these persons, God help them, they don't die in poverty.
Mhm.
That's what I have to say.
Absolutely. Mrs. Hermely Armstrong and Mr. Michael Henry Nichols, I never knew you guys were related, but
So I
it's
didn't know he and I was related neither.
I
yeah.
knew Mr. Armstrong a long time. I never knew we were related. But since I was growing up a little boy, my mother used to tell me, don't bring no girlfriend give her from Munich because everybody from Munich related.
I know.
Well, congratulations. I mean, we really
Thank
shouldn't be
you.
saying, I mean, congratulations, yes, but really and truly, this is your entitlement. You know what I mean?
Of course,
Exactly.
thank
And it's something that it's not supposed to be given to you as it's something you worked and you earned. Yeah,
Exactly.
you earned
Yeah.
your retirement. So it's
Exactly.
yeah. So
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for appearing on the program today. Both Mrs. Armstrong and Mr. Michael Henry Nichols. Viewers and listeners, please stand by. We will be right back with the second segment of the program.
Thank you.
The next segment of the Bubb Report comes to you compliments S.A. Johnson Funeral Home. They are a Caribbean family-owned funeral service. They offer a full range of funeral services at affordable prices in New York City. They can be reached on 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home. Because you deserve to be treated with dignity. And welcome back, viewers and listeners. As a programming note, we were to have been joined by the president. That is not the president, but the business sector representative in the Grenada Senate, Senator Salim Rahman. But due to scheduling conflicts, he's unable to be here for this episode of the report. Also, Mr. Chenny Joseph, who ought to have been his replacement, also canceled on us because he had a previous engagement. But we do have here Mr. Kenny John. Mr. Kenny John is the newly elected president of the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce. I believe we had a previous representative of the chamber on the program before. That's Mr. Duncan. So, Mr. John, I believe this is your first time appearing on the program. So we're certainly happy to have you. Welcome to the Bubb Report, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barber. It's a pleasure to be on.
Absolutely. And of course, before we get into the weeds with respect to what is happening down at the port, let us talk briefly about your election to the presidency of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Why did you offer yourself up for leadership, and what do you hope to bring to the table with respect to leading the chamber in this very uncertain economic time when volatility really is the order of the day with respect to business practices, with respect to prices, with respect to shipping and logistics, and just with respect to sustainability of business in this time?
It is often thought that without order, chaos ensues. I've been the first vice president of the chamber since 2019. You can imagine the ensuing events. COVID came along. Mr. Duncan was under pressure. His team, the executive, being part of the executive, assisting in whatever way we can. I guess it was my time. My time in terms of that pecking order. We are proud to have many people in the chamber who can, represent and do good things. Now, how did I know that after the pandemic, everyone was expecting some glorious improvement, that the world economic order is turned topsy-turvy and upside down? So you don't choose your battles, you have to rise with them.
You have to rise with those battles. And of course, given what is happening in the international community, there is the old adage that when America sneezes, developing countries like Grenada catch pneumonia. Obviously, now it's not America sneezing, but it's Russia and Ukraine. They probably have pneumonia. So what does that make us, right? So let us, go ahead.
I think this may have been coming for quite a while. So whereas Russia and Ukraine may be directly in conflict and bear some sort of part of the crisis, if we think about the supply chain and what that has caused, the supply chain in a sense was affected before Russia-Ukraine war. Apart from that, I think we have to look at it in context. Globalization, certain parts of it, has failed, essentially. We have a situation now where every country, if you look at the European countries, all realize that we need to make sure there's some sustainability, at least feeding ourselves, that needs to take place in our country. And our position as small island states, I think we need to rethink that concept of what we do, as the case being our import bill is fantastically elevated, and as such, we need to rethink what we do in terms of food security.
Absolutely. Now let us get into what really animated the news in Grenada last week, and that has to do with the Grenada Ports Authority strike led by the Technical and Allied Workers Union. Although there are reports that really who is wagging the dog? Is the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail here? But we have an update with respect to this story, and I'm going to cite a news story here from the Now Grenada publication. It's a press release that was issued by the Government of Grenada, by the Ministry of Labor, earlier today, that speaks to the resolution of the issue. The press release states both the Grenada Ports Authority and the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union have reached settlement of the dispute that resulted in workers at Port St. George taking industrial action over the past week. The parties arrived at a negotiated settlement facilitated by Minister for Legal Affairs, Labor and Consumer Affairs, and Attorney General Senator the Honorable Claudette Joseph, and Labor Commissioner Valerie Thomas. The highly anticipated resolution should see all workers immediately return to work and the speedy restoration of services at the port. The press release goes on to say the minister expressed gratitude to the parties for their cooperation and earnest effort in working towards an amicable resolution to the matter. And then she goes on to say, that's the minister, paraphrasing what the minister is saying, that it was unfortunate that the dispute escalated to the most extreme form of industrial action as a first response and before the dispute resolution mechanism contained in the collective bargaining agreement between the parties was triggered. Also, as a programming note, we did invite both the Minister of Labor, Senator the Honorable Claudette Joseph, who responded to our message and said that she was unable to make it, unlike her previous colleagues, unlike her other colleagues who don't seem to respond to messages that we send to them anymore. Some of them at least. But we also reached out to Mr. Andre Lewis, Senator Andre Lewis, the president of the Technical and Allied Workers Union. He has not responded to us at all. So, Mr. John, that must be good news. The fact that this issue has been resolved.
It is excellent news, Kelon. The business community have been suffering over this week, and particularly at the time that this strike happened. The chamber supports the port 100%. The port is obviously a member. Notwithstanding that, we believe that the collective bargaining arrangement is sacred, and it's that particular activity that makes union and employer, it's a bond. We cannot forget the importance of it as their partners. Unions are very important to businesses, particularly where businesses are large and may have varying types of employments within its ambit. It's important that we understand that the port is an essential service. The chamber was a bit bemused by why this action was taken, the most severe action was taken in the manner that it did, and thus the repercussions of a lot of loss of income and certainly disruption to the economy of Grenada. And as I said before, many traders are so angry. You're talking about from the traffickers right up to the manufacturers have suffered severe losses, not only during this week, but as you can imagine, that knock-on effect of what it caused.
Let us talk about those impacts. Obviously, I was hoping Mr. Joseph was going to be here, but talk to us in terms of dollars and cents. What does that? What do those impacts look like? Of course, delays at the port alone, and logistically moving your goods from that point of origin to different parts of the country, getting raw material and primary implements for what if you're doing manufacturing, or if you need to restock your shelves and things like that. All of these factor into what happens there. So talk to us in terms of what your members are saying in terms of the losses, dollars and cents.
Kellon, I apologize for not having figures on hand.
Yeah.
Mr. Joseph, who is also a member of the chamber, had a lot of those figures because he represents the largest shipping agent in the country. So he had a lot of those figures, but I can tell you some companies would have lost in excess of $200,000 worth of business. And that is one company. Business, instead of coming to Grenada for production, had to bypass Grenada. The places like the electricity company, fuel not being able to be dumped. This is our largest economic period, and it's important for us to gather and put that in our mind's eye to contemplate what it means economically. It's perhaps the single largest period that the turnover happens to allow many people to earn. And a lot of customers are looking forward to buy whatever their fancies are for the Christmas period. Now that's been delayed. I don't think we can truly say what the true economic impact is until this period has passed. Hopefully, it continues into January to allow those traders and other businesses to recoup some of those losses. But we have to keep in mind that some of those goods are perishable goods. And what happens then? The question is, should somebody be responsible for that? Should we call out someone to say, listen, this is the consequence? And you cannot.
Who do you think? Who do you think should be responsible for that? I mean, you alluded to the fact that you believe that this particular strike perhaps was not necessarily legal. Do you believe that the union should be held accountable for this?
I think all parties, the union in particular, let's take the blame where the blame ought to go. No one is diminishing the right of a union to actually fight for its employee. But did this activity, did this strike warrant the extent to which it affected the country in relation to the act that has happened? And I think we need to be careful in examining that. What was the process? Was the process adhered to? Information coming to us have said that no, due process did not take place. There's a process with the collective bargaining arrangement that speaks to that. Now, this sets a crazy precedence, if you indulge me for just a minute.
Yeah.
If a union would decide in a whimsical way to break a collective bargaining arrangement, then you open a can of worms for employers to say, well, if you're not going to take this serious, which is supposed to be the do-all and end-all of what we agree on, then I will do the same. And what happens then? We then have chaos ensuing in the country as to who should follow the rules. And the rules were set up specifically. It also speaks to not only in terms of our local scenario, but what happens internationally. Grenada is not divorced from the rest of the world. Potential investors are looking at this and saying, okay, the doing business index in this country relates to what relations exist between labor unions, etc., and businesses. And if I were a serious investor, this would actually have me stop to consider whether or not I'm actually going to invest in Grenada. Because if I can't consider the union as a partner in the business where there are protocols in place to follow, then what happens? It's anarchy. So I'm worried, and the business community is worried. And you said something earlier. If somebody, your neighbor's house is on fire, then maybe you should wet yours. Mm-hmm. So what would that say for the attitude of other businesses who may have unions representing workers? Does that then become a hard fix as to relations in the future? These are considerations that must be taken place, and not simply an isolated event as this one.
But this is not the first time, Mr. John, in this year alone, that the union held strike action at the port. In 2021, they also held strike action at the port. December 2021, and I'm quoting now from an article, for yet another year, the workers at the Grenada Ports Authority have engaged in mild industrial action due to the organization's failure to accede to their demands, payments of bonus, regularization of workers, increased salaries, among some of the gripes. So I'm just saying it does appear that there might be a volatile climate there at the ports. And of course, we're not going to get to the reasons for the strike in the first place. And that's why I was hoping that the president of the TAU would have been here. But is it a case that a lot of these issues need to be resolved in a sustainable way such that it does not impact business?
I believe you're totally correct. Your statement is totally correct. I think, therefore, the collective bargaining arrangement needs to be examined, and let's put blame where it is due. If the arrangement is not cohesive enough to have conducive activity take place, and what's more, the timing of it is rather suspect for me. I believe that there has to be a sense of responsibility for all. Yes, where you have matters that affect perhaps the wider community of workers, you can understand, because that's the reason that the unions are there, to fight for workers' rights. Yes. However, if you have an isolated issue that relates to one person and the circumstances in itself relate to some nefarious activity, then it stands to reason that that needs to be pulled aside. Was there investigations? There are rumors that investigations did happen.
Well, the Port Authority did release a press release saying that they did follow a particular due process in investigating this matter, and the particular employee implicated was so properly were given two options, essentially, quoting from their statement. And of course, I believe the employee neglected to choose one option over the other, and so the Port Authority acted. So I think they would say that they did act and followed, at least on their part, followed due process.
If that is within the collective bargaining arrangement, then the sides need not take a hard stance and agree. You see, I'm not of the opinion that union and employer should be a confrontational one.
Okay.
That's not how I see it in for business and continuity of business and continuity of employment. There is reasonableness that must be applied in as far as labor relations go. And I see unions as a vital part of the HR component of a business. So clearly, as you said, there seems to be some antagonism there. Hopefully that this will be the last severe confrontation that happens. I'm hoping that, especially what you call essential services, that something can be done to protect the country from this activity, understanding its implications for the economy and individuals.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now let us get to, obviously we would get to some of the concerns that were raised with respect to the malpractice of the employer in question, and that has to do with exit passes and skirting of the import rules. But I propose that it takes two to tango. And so there must be some incentive for that particular employee to behave in the way that they behaved, right? And so what I'm alluding to here is that perhaps there was a demand on the other end of things. There is a school of thought that some businesses in Grenada also encourage that kind of behavior in order to skirt the payment of taxes and duties that are owed to the state.
I believe, Dr. Bob, that the state is owed and due. What is it? It is owed and due. Yes?
Yes.
Taxes are a necessary part of the functionalities of government to fund all the issues that we have in the country. And too often, the impact of that is debilitating. It's a fact that what you call the registered businesses in the country are far less than the actual informal sector. Yes? I think government now has to sit back and look at what constitutes that. How can we regulate that? Where fairness must come to light. Where fairness is important in order to make sure that we run this country in a cohesive manner. So while some businesses, but then what businesses? Yes? I believe that as time goes on, the port should definitely have an audit to make sure that employees do not, what you call, go off on some sort of frolic on their own. And there is some penalty that comes to bear with all parties. Mm-hmm. Yes? Now, whether we approach this and say, okay, let bygones be bygones, but they're putting you on notice, some punitive actions will be taken if it is found that, this activity continues in any form or fashion, or should we go back and dig as far as we can? I'm sure you will find many instances of this. Yes? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. and varied instances. So I guess it's the approach that both the port and ultimately the government wants to take. But I'm more particularly concerned with where you have essential services, yes, involved, and the ensuing actions that debilitates the country and debilitates business on a whole. The port traffickers who do this weekly journey, some of the items are perishable, and it's it's tremendous, and it's disheartening actually to see that. What do they do with it now? You have a container, you're dependent on a refrigerated environment, and what happens now? That whole container of goods spoils.
Yeah.
No, I think that is
And
not.
and I'm even wondering if traffickers, especially the traffickers, obviously bigger business might have insurance facilities to mitigate loss and damage. But we're talking traffickers. I'm wondering what insurance facility there exists for them. You know,
They tend unfortunately not to have.
Yeah.
It's almost on a subsistence level. But as you can imagine, small businesses tend to rule countries, meaning that there are always a lot of small and medium, much more small and medium-sized businesses that affect the day-to-day lives. You cannot, I don't think it is fair to punish those who are trying legally to make a dollar. What we have to do is figure out how we facilitate that. Yes, be it government having cohesive activity that will allow them to flourish. We want more businesses and more small and medium-sized businesses in the country, and we must do it in a legal fashion.
Absolutely. Would you plan to have, of course, I believe that the unions and yourselves, all of you were part of what you call a committee of social partners. I'm not too sure if that still exists, but what kind of communication do you hope to have with the unions, maybe the Trade Union Council? Interestingly, the Seamen and Waterfront Workers Union were not part of this strike. I spoke to the general secretary, I believe, of the Seamen and Waterfront Workers Union, and they said they had nothing to do with this, and this was all on TAWU's end. So what kind of communication would you be having as a chamber with the trade union movement about especially the role of essential services in the functioning of the state?
I think all parties need to come to the table. Unions, chamber, government, and make a decision on how we want this country to operate. We can decide whether all we're doing in Grenada is hustling and there are no rules or order. As I said earlier, if this is going to be the attitude of, I'm not saying all unions, but any particular union, then it can equally be said that an employer can decide, well, I've seen this happen, and I don't feel trust is there. And so the paper that agreement is written on is useless. I think the union sullied its reputation somewhat in terms of the action that it took in such a short time, and I'm hopeful that it would examine that action, and that we can all come together on the table, especially with consideration for the essential services.
We have a comment here from Samantha Pascal. I honestly don't know who Samantha Pascal is because there is no profile picture of the person, but the person is saying Chamber is trying to silence the unions. Are you trying to silence the unions?
How can this chamber silence the unions? I just said earlier that unions are an important part of the business mechanism, the infrastructure, an essential part of it. Yes? And it is a partnership. I don't think that the chamber could, even if it had any desires, that it could silence a union. So I'm not quite sure how that comment can be validated.
Okay. All right, Mr. John, we want to take a quick break. It's Sunday evening. Of course, it's an hour ahead in Grenada, so it's after 5. So thank you for your indulgence. Of course, we will take a quick break, and we would come back for some closing comments from you, sir.
Sure.
Why would we have ambassadors representing the state that do not understand clearly what their terms of reference are?
To the cards that I have drawn that I am the minister at this point in time. And for members of the public...
But you're also a servant of the people. The unions are not threatening to withdraw their labor, and neither are they threatening to shut the country down, as you did.
I think you're summarization of my position is highly inaccurate and, may I dare say, a bit inflammatory.
The strategy did not work the last time for you. So what would make this
Well,
time different?
you're assuming that we doing the same strategy.
And welcome back to the program, folks. As a reminder, we have been joined today by Mr. Kenny John of the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce, who is reacting to the economic fallout from the Port Authority strike, not the Port Authority strike, but the TAU strike, TAU membership strike down there at the Grenada Port Authority. Now, Mr. John, I want to give you the opportunity for some closing comments. Of course, looking forward to 2022 business climate, business environment as a chamber, as well as given what we are experiencing, there is significant volatility, economic volatility in the world at this point. We're hearing indications from many analysts, economic analysts, about an impending recession. Some economists are of the view that we are already in a recession, but that the fundamentals of the global economy are such that it might be able to withstand that recession. But I want to hear your views, possibly around mitigating the fallout from a possible recession that might occur in 2022, 2023, that is. We also have a budget coming up in Grenada. There's so many things we can talk about. Of course, I would love to have you back, but just so over to you for some closing comments around those issues.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bubb. I would not comment any more on the issue at the port, but I would want to encourage Grenadians to start putting their thoughts together of how we can build this country. We have an incredible, unbelievable country with a lot of unbelievable people, very intelligent, very resourceful. I believe that this is a time, politics aside, obviously, that we need to understand what is within our power. I often use this adage, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously. Say Uncle Gary, he said, "The difficult we can do, the impossible may take a while." We are tempting faith on the impossible as it relates to the economic climate, because so much of it is out of our control. What I think we do have is our brains to sit and ponder and get together how we can solve and resolve our issues. As I recall, you sent me some agenda items, one of which is, the impending budget. I think we need to look at our whole tax regime. And this is not the absence of taxation, but the control of. We need to have a situation where everyone has to contribute, not just as it relates to license and taxes, but also we have national insurance. We have so many issues that I believe that those of us in the chamber are pretty much equipped to assist and are willing to assist. I'm grateful for the team, the secretariat, and the team of people in the chamber right now who are willing to offer their services in terms of the ideas of what we can do. So I believe that this is a partnership. I think that all of Grenada could get on board, understanding that we have to work. There is absolutely no work without labor. And I have to throw it out for, no reward without labor, sorry. And I have to throw it out for the GBSS boys, which is part of our alma mater, non palma sin labore. It is important that we understand the dynamics of economics. Yes, infrastructure, and we're not talking about roads and so on, business infrastructure. That means a cohesive, practical application of all that is around us to ensure that not just I, but we work together to achieve the impossible. And I would also like to, just before I leave, tell everybody the Caribbean Chambers are in Grenada this week. And we are glad to be the host of the conference of the Chambers of the Caribbean, 24 countries represented. That would happen tomorrow and Tuesday. And we're delighted to be part of that. And there will be more coming from the chamber, especially with the facilitation of the SMEs, non-registered business. We are opening our doors at the chamber to everyone.
Is this the first in-person Caribbean-wide chamber meeting?
It is since
Yep.
COVID. Since COVID.
Since
yeah.
COVID. So I'm sure you guys are happy to see other colleagues in person, pressing the flesh, if you will.
Indeed, indeed. It's not the same virtually as much as we romanticize over
No, it's not.
the ability of the technology. It's not the same.
Yeah, I attended a professional, I believe this was the second one, but this is my first time attending the professional conference for my professional association. And it's just different. The way that you're able to network and connect with people, it's just not the same online and virtually at all.
Emotional intelligence and that spirit, yes, that eye to eye contact and how you get on with one person versus the next, to feel the charm and warmth of genuine human communication is something that we have to understand, that we are social animals, and it's important that continues.
Absolutely. Mr. Kenny John, I hope this will be your first of many appearances on the Bubb Report. Your predecessor, Mr. Emmanuel Duncan, has been a friend of the show. He's always been happy to oblige. So we certainly would hope that you can also take that charge and appear on the Bubb Report when needs be.
It will be my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Viewers and listeners, that was Mr. Kenny John, the newly elected president of the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce, taking on that role at a very critical time with respect to the port strike that just unfolded last week, which has since been resolved, as we learned by way of a press release from the Government of Grenada through the minister responsible for labor, who indicated that they were able to come to an amicable solution, but of course bemoaning the fact that it ought not to have come to this, and this issue ought not to have escalated in the way that it escalated, putting blame on the unions, really, for getting it to that point. Of course, viewers and listeners, on behalf of the producers, I want to thank you again. The program would return to its normal 10 a.m. time slot. That's 10 a.m. in Grenada, 9 a.m. in North America, those of you in North America. So that's 10 Atlantic Standard Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. On behalf of the producers of the Bubb Report, I'm your humble servant, Dr. Kellen Bubb, wishing everyone a pleasant week. Bye-bye.